Hi and welcome. My name is Brendan Kelly and I'm joined today by Simon Buckingham. Welcome, Simon.
G'day, Brendan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight.
It is a very exciting time to be in the property market, or at least thinking about getting in. There is a lot happening around property at the moment. We've got interest rates coming down, sentiment going up, and we've got this thing called the first home buyer scheme that's just started to play out. And we're finding as a result of that, there is a significant lift in interest in people looking to get into property and back into property investing. And particularly some first home buyers and first time investors. Interestingly enough, experienced investors are also coming back in. And we thought it pertinent for those players in the field to get maybe some insights into how not to make some fairly big mistakes. And actually, there's a couple of key things that people can work on that would make a very, very big difference to the ability to get it right the first time. Thank you for joining us. We are property investors and have been doing this for more decades than our grey hairs tend to want to give away. We are property investors, renovators, residential developers, commercial developers. We have done joint venture agreements, money partner agreements, vendor finance agreements. We have done overseas investing, local investing, buy and hold, add value, sell, apartments, houses, blocks of apartments, warehouses. We've played the game. And that gives us a certain skill to be able to speak to what property investing is all about. And when we talk to people, as I like to describe it, shine a torch on the road ahead of where they're going to help them avoid the potholes that other people or people less skilled might fall into. And that's part of our greatest ambition, to contribute to others and their well-being on their journey. To that end, we've written a book. We write articles, we write in magazines, we write blogs. We are educators, we are public speakers, we present. We recently did a TV show, the #1 streaming show on CTV Plus for a period, which was great. And we've launched recently also the Real Estate Success Community. Now, if you're not on that yet, my encouragement is jump on by zapping this QR code or simply search in the App Store and you'll access it that way. If you join, you also get a top 10 suburb list, which is great. Helps you identify the suburbs that are currently looking to boom, which is awesome. We also run a company called Property Predictions, which is all about market analytics, which allows us to identify those suburbs for which there will be significant growth pending. And that's a contribution towards those people who we work with for their ability to buy in the right areas at the right time that serve their needs and the objectives that they're looking to satisfy. Our greatest capacity, though, to make a difference is via the Results Mentoring Program. And that's something that we've both been doing now for decades, and we still enjoy very much. There's no passion greater than that for a desire to make a contribution. And to that end, yes, we've spent many a year dedicating ourselves to the well-being of others on their property investing journey. Classic example would be Adam. Adam came to us several years ago and said, "Hey, I've done a reno. I did okay. Have you got a system that can help me do this better, perhaps?" Sure. Within 5.5 years, he was earning more from his property investing activity than he was from his employment. And he said, "There's a disconnect here. Why am I employed?" So quit. Currently doing 17 projects simultaneously worth more than $50 million. Brilliant, and doing really well. Catherine came to us as a single mum, part-time employed, said, "Not the path I thought I was going to take. Have you got a way that I can work around where I'm at in order to get a life that's better than the one I'm in right now?" And we were able to support her such that she was able to quit. Again, she started to earn more money from her property investing activity than she did from being employed. And now she lives a wonderful life in a glorious home, beautiful kids, happy place, profits to date more than 5 million, with another 2.5 million currently underway and doing really well. James, another example. He'd not done anything in property before. And he said, "I want to get this right. I want to get this right first time. There's a consequence to getting it wrong. Can you help?" So we worked with him, supported him in the right way to take on the property investing activity that he wanted to do. Within 5 years, he was earning more from his property investing activity than he was from his well-paid consultancy job. He quit. Entertainingly, his boss tapped him on the shoulder on the way out the door and says, "Hey, can I invest with you on your next one?" Which was really cool. Profits to date, more than $13 million. If this is the sort of thing that interests you, or something that you think that you could get some wisdom about to be able to do it better, faster, safer, we're offering a free strategy session this evening. We're offering it this evening. We're not having the free strategy session this evening. You'll talk to an experienced property investing mentor, and it's an opportunity for you to share with them where you're at, what you're up to, so they can then shine that torch on the road you're going down to make sure you avoid any potholes. All right. So how do we know what the right thing to do is? How do we not get stuck in those potholes? How do we not trip and stumble over the bricks, rocks, and boulders that are in the road ahead of us that look so benign until we hit them? How do we do that? And we want to go through the mistakes that people in these positions inadvertently make, and then what you can do about it. Wonderful.
Yeah, and this isn't just about first-time investors. It's particularly important for first-time investors because if you make some of these mistakes, it could set back your investing years, even decades. Some of the mistakes can hurt. But it's also something we find that even seasoned investors, experienced investors can fall into some of these traps. So if you're not a first-time investor and you're on here, don't think that we're just going to be talking entry-level basics that you already know. You might see yourself in some of these mistakes, and maybe you've experienced some of these. How do you avoid making these kinds of mistakes, the kinds of mistakes that can set back your investing years on your next deal and the one after that and the one after that? How do you keep getting it right consistently? How, for those who are just starting out, how do you get it right from the get-go? So that's what tonight's discussion is all about. And I'm really looking forward to this, Brendan, because we don't talk an awful lot about this stuff in a lot of the webinars that we do. So it's timely, as you say, in the market, as the market's really starting to take off in different parts of the country and people are thinking about their first or their next investment, to really take a hard look at some of these issues and particularly what you can do to avoid them, how you can do things differently to get a far better outcome in your investing.
Cool. So let's get into it. Mistake number one. Mistake number one is pretty simple, but something that so many people fall into. Ready, fire, aim. The idea of, I think I want to go and get a property to invest in. Realestate.com.au, found one I can afford, buy it, and then go, what do I do with it now? Ready, fire, aim. That leads to a whole pile of a process. In essence, it's a gambling process. It is not sure what I'm doing. My bank says I can afford it. Then it's got to be okay that I'm not going to crash and burn miserably. Let's go and do it. And then hope and pray that it all works out okay, or that I get more, or that it does something for me. Now, the whole concept of it doing something for me unto itself is a loose description of an objective. And what we will talk about is the concept of ready, aim, and fire over time. We're going to talk about what it is to aim. So, Simon, what are some of the things that people get wrong? What are some of the things that people need to consider in not making this mistake?
Yeah, and this is something that does come up with people who've even got a few properties in their portfolio already. When you ask them, what's the plan for the property, or what was your plan for this property when you bought it? Did you even have a plan? They can't answer the question. In reflection, they didn't have a plan. They bought something because they could afford it. And there's plenty of so-called educators in the property investing space that will say, just go and buy the most expensive property that you can afford because you'll leverage it up. And then if you get 10% growth on a more expensive property, well, then that's more in dollars. And that's what you should be doing. It's a very random, loose approach to property investing. It's investing without an actual plan. The first question I'd ask is, what are you actually trying to achieve? Do you know why you're investing. You're going to put all this money and time and some effort into acquiring properties, investing in properties, doing property strategies. Why? What is it that you want to get out of it? Can you actually quantify financially what it is your investing is meant to do for you? Most people, I think, when they start their investing, don't think this way. And so they go off to find a property that they can afford, they buy it, and then they wonder, okay, what's next? Or they pat themselves on the back and say, wear the badge of pride that says, I'm a property investor, now I own a property, without a clue as to whether that property is going to deliver something tangible financially for them in the time frame that's actually going to work for them. And often that's because they haven't even defined what that financial outcome is or what that time frame is. So the first thing that you want to consider here in terms of getting your investing right is to understand why you're doing it in the first place. What tangibly is the objective that you're trying to achieve?
Part of the ready, fire, aim approach is who you listen to before you pull the trigger. See, if you're at a dinner party and you've got a lot of friends saying, I own a property, well, I own a property, or I own a property, and you're going, I don't, then there's some peer pressure to go and get something. And then you go, well, I don't know where to go, but if I've got something, at least I can be part of the community that I'm of the group of friends I'm in, and I won't be ostracized or left out. And so it's the fear of missing out or the fear of being left out. But you go and do it and you shoot from the hip, in essence, and you buy something. Or you listen to your accountant. You need to save tax because you're earning a reasonable amount. If you lose money on an investment, then guess what? You pay less tax. So let me help you lose money on an investment. We'll negatively gear something so that you're out of pocket, so that you pay less tax. And ultimately, one day it'll go up in value, we hope. But the primary objective is get something with the lowest possible yield so that you can spend as much extra money out of your pocket in order to save as much tax as you can. And the accountant then wears a badge on his chest that says, look at what I've saved you in tax. Aren't I a good accountant? Let alone your cash flow suffering as badly as it does. And it all comes back down to who you listen to. I think I want to win property invest. I know there are these property investing camps that you can go on, or these property investing flights that you can sign up into. And I can fly up north and they'll show me some beautiful places in the sunny areas of Australia and tell me how wonderful it is based on a flat and consistent 10% growth per annum. And there's no problems because everything's just beautiful and sunny up there. So yeah, I've got to buy one. In fact, if I can buy two, I will. And I can use their financiers, and I can use their accountant, and I can use all the brokers. How easy is that? You know, this is the answer. It's just who you listen to has the capacity to influence the decision you make. And particularly from a position of vulnerability, you are open to being influenced. And that comes back down to the ready, fire, aim mistake, which is I kind of listened to the wrong people, or I kind of was educated about the wrong way. Part of the answer is who do you talk to that you can trust? And I think one of the things that's really important is don't speak to someone with a vested interest in you buying the property. If they've got a vested interest in it, they've got an agenda that's not yours. They've got a hand in your pocket. So who you listen to is part of the mistake of the ready, fire, aim approach.
Yeah. And I think we're going to keep looping back to this point tonight because this is all about having control over your investing outcomes.
But the wisdom as well, the ability to make the decisions unto yourself, for yourself, knowing what you're going to get out of it. And it speaks to the failing to plan is planning to fail.
Exactly right. So your best defense against the vested interests and against the mistakes of I bought something with the primary objective of saving tax rather than making money is to know why you're investing in the first place. And fundamentally, as an investor, your objective should be to make money first and foremost. That's why you're doing it. But the question is, how much money do I need to make and by when? If you can come up with some parameters, even when you're just starting out, some loose parameters about what am I actually trying to achieve with my investing? How much do I need to make from my investing and by when? Then you can start to formulate a plan for how you're going to go about your investing. It will start to inform what you do, what kinds of property deals you're looking to do, in what time frame, and how fast and hard you have to go, or what sort of time you've got to actually do it on. If you know what your financial goals are, then every decision that you make about buying a property, holding a property, potentially selling a property, every one of those decisions comes down to a simple question: does this serve my financial goals? How does this fit with my financial goals? If you don't have financial goals, you don't know, right? How can you answer that question? You're investing without a plan. You don't know if it's going to serve you. You don't know if it's going to achieve your financial goals, because you don't actually even know why you're investing in the first place.
So don't take that as a beat up. We're not attempting to sit here and beat you up. You haven't
but
got a plan.
It's a wake-up call.
Bad, wrong. That's not what this is about.
It's a wake-up call. It's not just a wake-up call for first-time investors, or an invitation for first-time investors to think a bit differently. But for those seasoned investors, active investors, experienced investors, and you've got a portfolio of one or more properties already, ask yourself the same question: what was this property meant to achieve for me, or these properties? What is the outcome I'm looking for, and by when? If I can't articulate that, if I can't quantify it, then I've got a bit of work to do to figure that out, so that I'm making a more informed decision on what I do next, and also more informed decisions about what I do with the properties I've already got to make sure they fit better with that financial goal. It really is a key differentiator between the novice investor and the more sophisticated investor, being able to make that decision on every investment that you're undertaking, knowing how it fits with your financial goals.
It's actually a significant path of transition from novice to sophisticated, to actually take that on as a thought.
Exactly.
Before we go into mistake number 2 that we've seen or identify or talk about tonight, before we go into that, the how do you plan to make money from this property deal kind of speaks to the idea of strategy. It kind of speaks to the idea of what am I going to do with it now that I've got it, or what am I going to do with it when I get it? You want to do an active strategy of adding value by way of a reno, or by way of a subdivision, or by way of development. If you are considering that sort of path now or into the future, then that's got to be part of the conversation in your head before pulling the trigger. If you're looking to just hold, then that's fine too. But what is it? And you go back to how long have I got before I'm going to use it? When do I want to retire? I might want to retire in 5 years. Is that enough time for me to get my growth? I might want to retire in 50 years. And that's plenty of time. And do I swap it out for something better later? Time is one of the components. So think about the outcome that you want and the things you can do with it before pulling the triggers, I guess, is the primary aim.
Yeah, if I can add a personal story to that. I remember when I was starting my journey so many years ago in terms of property investing, and looking at what I was going to do as my first property deal. I had an idea in my head that I wanted to get out of my job as fast as possible. And I set myself an objective of getting out of the corporate world in just a handful of years. I would look at various properties that were on the market, and I could see properties and I thought, yeah, this could be a really good long-term growth property. I can see this area is growing in population. It's landlocked. I could buy a property here and I could expect reasonably that it'll go up in value over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But because my goal was to get out of my job in 3 or 4 years,
wouldn't suit.
It made no sense to buy one of those properties. What was the point of tying up capital and borrowing capacity in a property that I had to hold for 10, 20, 30 years to see substantial growth out of, to see a real return from, and negatively gearing it along the way, which was just going to chain me to my job even more? What was the point of doing that? So I had to look at other property investing strategies. And when I woke up to that and I got educated and I learned how to do those other strategies, it only took 3.5 years to get out of my job for good and never look back. But most people, and this is especially people who've never invested before, they've probably only heard of one real way of investing. That's buy a property and hope it goes up in value. Maybe get some tax breaks along the way through negative gearing, depreciation, blah, blah, blah. we'd encourage you to think differently and to realize that there's a whole world of different property investing strategies, different types of property deals that you can do that can give you a radically different outcome. If your goals are not, I want to just have a property that's worth more in 20, 30 years. And so start to think differently.
It comes back to your broad plan for life. And there's the invitation. If you ever think about what it is you want to achieve in life for yourself with some broad scope around timing, you can then start to slot your property purchase into how they're going to support you to achieve that. Macro conversation, not a common conversation. And there's the invitation. Start an uncommon conversation with yourself and see how it plays out. All right. Mistake number 2. Having made the decision to buy and understanding what it is you're going to get out of it, it's then buying the right one, kind of in the right area. Not all suburbs behave the same way at the same time. In fact, no two do. There are 15,000 suburbs. There are 5,000 with units. There are 20,000 individual markets playing out in this country simultaneously. No two the same time, the same way. So how do you pick one? And then there's the whole, I've got houses and I've got units. I've got pockets within a suburb. I've got economic circumstances that are playing out. I've got microeconomic circumstances that are playing out. I've got infrastructure circumstances that are playing out. Where do I go? What do I do? And how do I make it work? If you invest time in understanding that, if you invest a little time in figuring that out in advance of actually pulling the trigger, you are so much better prepared to take advantage of what that is likely to bring for you. And therein lies the invitation. If you can get a grip on how the market plays out, then you can make a more informed decision about your ability to buy the property that's going to serve your needs.
Yeah.
And there's the invitation on that. Don't buy blind into any area because of what? It's close to home, or because of my mate bought there, or because of my mum grew up in that spot and she said it was a lovely spot, or because of, and I think I'm just going to go straight into mistake number 3, buying on emotion because of its gut feel, or because I had a holiday there once and you know what? It was a wonderful holiday. Everybody's going to love to be here. The price has to go up. You know, all these sorts of things that play out from an emotional level. Simon.
Yeah. So this was a massive realization, I think, for us in our own investing, was recognizing that Australia is not one property market. Sydney is not one property market. Melbourne is not one property market. They're a collection of suburbs, each of which performs differently. And then the house and unit markets in those suburbs don't necessarily perform the same way. The moment you realize that, you start to recognize that you can't just listen to the media, and coming back to the point about who you're listening to, you can't just listen to media commentators that talk about, well, values in Perth are going up, or values in Darwin are going up, or values in Hobart are going down, or anything like that. You've got to recognize that you don't buy the country. You certainly don't buy a state. You don't buy a city. You don't even buy an entire suburb. You buy a property of a particular type within a particular suburb. And that's the level at which you then need to understand the market. And that might seem overwhelming, but it's really just a question of education. And for those who've been on some of our other webinars, you know, we teach techniques on how to read the market at the individual suburb level. And there are some fairly simple, straightforward techniques you can use to do that. The point is not to assume that just because the city's going up, that you buying a property randomly anywhere in that city, in any of the 300, 500, 600 suburbs in that city, that you're going to do well. Because you might pick the suburb that's actually going backwards.
Don't stand back 6 feet from the map and grab a dart and have a toss and go, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
More due diligence required.
Exactly. So the first thing you want to do when it comes to understanding the property market is stop listening to the media. There are plenty of people out there that will cry the sky is falling, that property is going to implode. There'll be other people that will claim that property is going to jump 50% in the next 12 months. They're all wrong, because they're all looking at it at the wrong level and they don't actually understand how the market actually works. The truth is always to understand the balance of that supply and demand, the trends within the individual suburb for the particular property type that you're considering investing that's going to fit your budget. So
There's also those that go, again, listen to the people and the media and the commentary and the property commentators per se. ABC suburb went up by 50%. That's the place you've got to go. Or ABC, XYZ suburb went up by 10% this year. That's where you've got to go. Because it's been going up, that's where you've got to go, because it's always going to go up forevermore at the same rate or higher. The people reporting on history of magnificent growth, that's where you've got to go. Well, no, that's...
And it's a little distressing to see people buy into that. I mean, there's a reason why super funds and financial planners always have that tiny little disclaimer that says past performance is no guarantee of future performance. That is even more true when it comes to the property market at the individual suburb level. Just because values went up over the last couple of years in the suburb does not mean they're going to go up, and doesn't mean they'll go up at the same rate. They might even go down over the next couple of years. And unless you know the signs to watch for, you could get caught out buying at the top and then seeing the value of your equity eroded for the next few years while you're waiting for the market to right itself and to try and fix your mistake. And it may never. And that's something that could set you back years. So it is critical that you understand how to read the market before you commit yourself to buying a property in a given.
And it's interesting. You don't have to be a novice investor to walk into that trap. I was talking to a seasoned investor that I hadn't met before, only recently. And they said, Brendan, tell me about this suburb because it's just gone up 15% and I think it's ready to buy into now. And I've gone, well, let's talk about that. And it was destined to be going down. The 12-month history said it was booming. The current market was neutral and the forecast was stressed. It was not an exciting place to be walking into. And I had to offer a gentle redirection in that conversation.
Yeah.
Emotion, Simon, emotion. We are all robots and never make a mistake emotionally.
As much as we might like to imagine that we're somehow emotionless and clinical in our investing decisions. Exactly. Some sort of Vulcan when it comes to our property investing. The reality is that all human beings are fundamentally directed by two base emotions, fear and greed. When we're confident and excited, we get greedy and we make decisions such as investing decisions, the decision to buy. When we are nervous and fearful, we either sit on our hands or we panic and we run.
Well, no, not in a FOMO scenario. If you're fear of missing out, you'll just pull the trigger on anything.
It's the direction you're running, isn't it? You're either running towards or running away because of the fear. But yes, so the FOMO is almost a combination of the two. That fear of missing out is also a face of greed. I've got to get in to make the money, to get the gain. You just spoke about someone looking at a market that had just boomed by 15% and thinking that's a great time to invest. That sort of the market is booming and everybody's getting in. I've got to get in. It's that gut feel, that emotional drive to not miss out that's making you make a decision. It is not a smart, informed decision. Likewise, when people are out of the market, and we've had several instances over the past few years where we've picked the bottom of the market and we've said to people, now's a great time to get in. Most of the market was running the other way, and the media would be talking about further falls of 10, 20% plus. And where they're saying, no, now's the time to actually be getting in. If you listen to the fear, you don't act, you miss the opportunity. You look back in 5 years and wonder, oh, where could I have been by now if I'd actually acted? So you need to be able to get past that, be more informed in your decision making, not buy on or sell on the emotions. You buy and sell on the trends, the numbers. Does this meet my financial objectives? You don't buy, as you said, Brendan, just because you think it's a great place for someone to live or we had a good holiday there. One of the things we often see,
you like it.
Exactly. One of the things we often see is that people get attracted to pretty houses. It's a brand new off the plan package. It's going to be low maintenance. It looks beautiful in the brochure. It's going to come with depreciation benefits, so you'll save tax. all these things, and it's in this brand new estate. It's going to be surrounded by other new homes, or it's in this brand new apartment complex, and it's going to look $1 million. The problem with that is that you're paying the premium for something that's pre-packaged. It's like buying convenience food, fast food. It's already pre-packaged. All the work's been done for you, but you eat enough of this stuff, you feel pretty sick, because it doesn't do a lot for you and it can actually work against you. We've had people buy properties from off the plan developer spruikers, selling them on the depreciation benefits, selling them on the idea that there's all this development going on. It's going to be a great place. Things will go up in value. They've held those properties for 10 years and seen zero growth because they bought on emotion.
Negative geared the whole time.
Paying for the privilege of losing money. What an awesome investing strategy.
I don't know if you recall, Simon, cast your mind back in the 80s. Admittedly, I'm old enough to experience that. But back in the 80s, Cranbourne was a new suburb.
Yeah.
A greenfield estate. And it was touted to be the next wave and the next growth area. And prices by developers consistently went up, and people were buying, and they were all new homeowners, brand new area, dense living, out in the middle of, at that time, nowhere, but just brilliant. Cranbourne didn't exceed the price that people bought in for over 10 years. The whole suburb, not just a couple of houses, the whole suburb did not grow beyond its original sell price for 10 years. And that was on the back of the developers dictated the price. Those people selling the house and land packages dictated the price. And because everybody else was paying that price at that time, everybody thought that it was the right price to be paying. And what they didn't think was the collateral around, well, what was happening elsewhere in the area. Admittedly, not a lot. But there was what will happen into the future. And a lot of people bought for their homes. Great, fantastic. They had a house. But there was a lot of people who bought as an investment. And yeah, there was limitations to the growth or the win that they got over a 10-year period.
Yeah, that idea of that prepackaged solution. We often say it in our mentoring program to our students that you're going to make the most money if you're actually a problem solver. If you can take something that is not as good as it can be and make it better, you'll make the money because someone will pay you for the better product. If you just buy the thing that's already great, you're relying on...
What you're going to do is watch it be not so great over time.
That's right. It's actually going to wear down over time. But it's kind of the greater fool theory. Your profit is then reliant on someone stupider than you coming along and paying you more for it.
They're not harsh.
Not harsh at all. But fundamentally, that's what it is. You're not relying on a strategy per se. You're gambling on someone being foolhardy enough to pay more for it, rather than understanding the dynamics in the market that are actually going to drive growth, or being able to do something, solve something with this property to make it more valuable and create your profits that way, be more in control. And as an investor, we want to be in as much control as we can be. We can't eliminate risk, but we can certainly manage risk down to acceptable levels. We can't control every variable, but we can stack the odds in our favor.
Which leads to the idea you're talking about, where we listen to the property marketeers, we listen to the accountants about where we go. We get told that it's the right thing to be doing. And we go, oh, okay then. And we abdicate responsibility. We give other people the authority in our lives for our investing consequences or decisions, outcomes. Yeah. It's the whole thing that you're talking about taking control, or the adverse of that, not actually taking control, abdicating it.
That's right. I mean, you might be listening to Brendan and I talk and going, oh, it all sounds a little bit scary what you guys have been going through, or it all sounds like it's too hard. I just want someone to do it for me. Mistake number 4. Right? Giving someone else the authority to make your financial decisions, the decisions about your financial destiny for you, just assuming that they're going to have your best interests at heart.
Challenge, super funds. Isn't that what a super fund is all about? You pay money into a super fund and trust that the super fund will do everything it can for you, fees limited, etc.
And my personal distaste for what the outcome of that was over the years to pull my money out of my super fund and put it into an SMSF. But aside from that, it also taught me not to rely on my super fund and to actually try and take greater control outside the super fund in creating my own financial future. It's about taking ownership, right? If you won't take ownership of your financial future, if you're just going to let others push you around, then you'll get whatever others give you. If you want to really have a great life, a much better life, you have to own the decisions that are going to drive that. You have to be the one in the driver's seat. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't seek expert advice, that you don't seek support. You're not an island. You do delegate and you do find those trusted advisors to support you through this process. But at the end of the day,
you listen to them.
Correct.
But you also verify what they say. You also get second opinions on what the information is that comes your way. Never trust an individual real estate agent to tell you the truth. But you get 6 of them saying the same thing. There's some truth in that. Does it make sense? If you've got enough people. Now, admittedly, that kind of flies in the face of my Cranbourne example, which everybody was telling you Cranbourne was okay. But
yeah, so there is a danger in groupthink, isn't there?
There is a danger in following the herd, correct. But then you've got to ask how many of those people who bought in Cranbourne are actually experts around what was happening in Cranbourne. So my point, choose your advisors wisely, choose them carefully. There are people out there that are actually wanting to serve you well, obviously not at their own sacrifice. There's a win-win in it somehow, either financially or a balance in an equation of a relationship there. But there are people that are genuinely out there doing their best in order to serve their own lives and the lives of their clients and customers. And therein lies an opportunity if you get in front of the right people. So then how do you pick the right people?
Yeah. Let's talk for a second then about avoiding the sharks, because there are some real sharks out there, self-interested, nasty players. And they prey on novices in particular, but they'll also prey on the more experienced investors if you're not careful. There are some dead set giveaways, though.
And before you go on, that's not everybody in this industry, because there are some really wonderful people with a heart of gold to want to make a contribution in this industry as well. The trick is to read A from B.
It's to be able to recognize the warning signs so that you know who to steer clear of and where to be particularly cynical in your assessment of their advice. Some of the things, and we've got some on the slide here, the kinds of things that you'll often hear the property spruikers say, those who've got a real vested interest in just getting you to part with money. They'll be offering you what they claim is a discounted or wholesale property. We've got a direct relationship with the builder or the developer. We can get it for you wholesale. What a pile of crap. Someone's getting paid, right? You can guarantee that the builder or the developer is getting paid. They're making their profit. And the person who is acting as the middle person to bring you the deal is also getting paid. They have a vested interest in you buying that property. The question is, does that property actually fit your financial goals? Do you understand enough about the numbers, and we'll get to that shortly, to know whether it is genuinely below supposed market value? So be very wary if someone's coming to you offering you supposed discounted or wholesale properties, because it's all about them pocketing a buck from getting you to take those on, with very little regard to what you financially are actually going to get out of that transaction. You get I'll call them educators in disguise, sales agents posing as educators, where they really make their money through back-end commissions for getting you to buy properties from them off a pre-prepared list or through developer relationships they've got or something like that. They put themselves out there as an educator. I'm going to train you on property. What they're really training you on is how to buy their properties. The so-called training is really secondary then to the hard sell to try and get you to actually purchase one of the properties off their list. When you do that, and when it turns out that 5 years later, the property still hasn't performed, it hasn't gone up in value at all, and you go to that so-called educator and say, my property's not performing, what's going on? You can expect the response to be something along the lines of, you got to understand that property investing is like baking a cake, Brendan. You just got to get the cake, put it in the oven, and let it bake. It's the property investing equivalent of she'll be right, mate, but it's also more insidiously, don't look too close at this bad decision that you made when you bought this property, because if we can convince you that you've just got to sit there and wait, then we don't have to confront the fact that we conned you into doing a bad deal. And you see that again and again. And that property investing is like baking a cake quote is a real quote from one of these spruikers. It's a real line that they use to try and deflect attention away from the idea that they sold somebody onto a property that in an oversupplied area that didn't go up in value and probably never will. So you want to be very wary of that sort of language as well. The whole idea that don't worry about it, it's a long-term investment. It's just a don't look too close. Don't pay attention. Or you mentioned before, Brendan, this idea of this 10-year perfectly even year-on-year 10% growth line. That means that in 10 years from now, your property's worth 100% or more than it was.
Only where the sun shines.
Correct. But it magically goes up the same amount every year in a perfectly straight line. And it irks me when I see and I hear even buyer's agents using this sort of line where they'll bring a property to somebody, show that client a made-up chart that says this property is going to go up in value over the next 10 years, year on year by 7% or whatever, in a perfectly straight line. The only thing you know about that chart for real is it's not going to be right.
Yeah.
That's not how the market behaves.
The only thing you know about that chart that's real is the fact that it's not real.
But those buyer's agents and spruikers and marketing agents will gloat about how their clients lap that up. And that's just something that, as an investor and as an educator, it really, really gets my goat when I hear that, because that is just conning people. It's selling them on a falsehood as opposed to doing the real analysis and coming up with the real reasons why a property should perform.
So if you're in one of those places and you get this advice and you get indications around, here's one I prepared earlier, what should you do?
Yeah, part of me says run away. Part of me says approach it with a high degree of cynicism. But the true answer is really, you need to know how to do the analysis yourself. Right? Even if you're going to outsource, there are some very good buyers agents out there. And there are certainly real estate agents and others that show a lot more integrity than some in the industry. And as you said, Brendan, there are people there that have got the heart to serve their clients and are trying to do the best by their clients. But even if you're going to outsource because you're time poor or whatever, you're going to outsource to a buyer's agent to help you find a property that's going to suit your needs. They're not buying the property. You are. You're the one who has to make sure it's going to fit your goals. So you need to know how to analyze the property deals that are being presented to you yourself, whether they're coming from a buyer's agent, someone who might be a spruiker, whatever. You need to be able to pull those deals apart and put them back together and say, okay, do the numbers make sense? Does this work for my financial goals? Because no one, not the buyer's agent or anyone else, cares as much about your financial goals as you do. And frankly, a buyer's agent and a real estate agent are not going to take any responsibility whatsoever for your financial outcomes, are they, Brendan?
No, it's not their job. Their job is to provide you properties to look at. It's your job to pull the trigger. Their job is to encourage you to pull the trigger because that's how they get paid. Their job is to encourage the ability to eat for themselves and keep the roof over their own head and bring their own kids up. That's where their responsibility lies. And if they could sell you into a deal such that you sign it and buy it and they get a commission, then everyone walks away happy, at least in their mind. And if it doesn't work out, well, I did my best. Before we go on, there was a question. If it happens that it doesn't work out, do you have a legal stance to sue? And the answer is no, you don't. No, you don't. It is your decision to buy. the responsibility of the purchase lies on you, which goes back to make sure you do your own due diligence on what you're being told. Make sure you understand the numbers in the deal before getting into the deal so that you know that you're not making a mistake, or you're at least mitigating as much risk as possible.
So the comment in response to your answer there was, but we're paying money for their expertise.
That's what they're putting out there. What are we paying for then? That's a great question. We wonder sometimes.
You'll find that in the property industry, like so many industries, the consultants are all care and ultimately no responsibility. They can't take responsibility for your financial outcomes. I don't fault a buyer's agent or real estate agent getting a commission, because they're performing a service, they're putting in effort, and in return they get paid. Our job as investors is not to blame others for our fortunes or misfortunes, right? It's to take ownership of our decisions, to drive our own financial future forward, be the one in the driver's seat, not be the passenger in your own financial future. And that is something I would strongly encourage everyone listening to this to take on board. If you want to create a great life for yourself, if you want to build wealth for yourself, then own the process. Take responsibility for that process, but recognize that the financial decisions are yours and yours alone, and that you can't abdicate that responsibility to somebody else.
So the question, what are we paying them for? We're paying them for saving us time. If we go to them and say, find me a house, then we are giving them the responsibility relative to our instructions to find properties that fit our criteria that we can then choose to buy or not buy. That's the service they're providing. They'll do some due diligence on it. If you want it, great, buy it. If you don't want it, great, I'll give you another one. They're saving you time. Their service is to save you time. But that doesn't diminish your risk. That doesn't diminish your responsibility in being able to buy and buy well. It is the provision of deals coming across your table rather than you having to go out and find them, saving you time. But again, the responsibility to pull the trigger is yours.
And those deals might be a great opportunity.
Correct. Frankly, a lot with respect to some of those buyers agents wouldn't know anyway, but that doesn't matter. You know, their job is to provide stuff that they think is going to serve your needs relative to the criteria that you put forward. So not understanding the numbers. You mentioned this earlier. It is all about the ability to get to know the numbers to support the removal of the emotion.
Yeah.
You make a decision based on the criteria and the numbers that you put forward, not on the gut feel, not on the FOMO or the anxiety of missing out, not on the greed of how much money I can make from this because it's going to go up 10% per year for 10 years straight. You know, all of those things are aside from you knowing the numbers. And the answer is to know the numbers. What's your cash position going in? What's the borrowing capacity going in? Make sure you got enough to see the project through to completion or the service through to completion, that you've got a market condition and you understand the numbers around the current market and where the market's at, so that you can then get into an area that's going to go up in value, or at least give you the best chance to it to go up in value. The more you know around the numbers of the deal that you're about to get into, the greater the confidence you have to pull the trigger, the greater certainty you have that your risks will be mitigated. You cannot mitigate all risk, but to the best of your power, you mitigate as much as you can. And a good set of numbers and an understanding around how the numbers work for the property you're about to buy provides you the greatest certainty around the risks that you can mitigate.
The numbers almost tell you what to do.
They do.
Right?
Yeah.
The numbers tell the story about how much do we expect to make from this property? What are the risks in this property? How much of a buffer have I got for those risks? Can I afford this property? Do I have the financial wherewithal to actually take this on? How much am I going to make from this property? And then coming back to the key question that we asked earlier, which is really, how does it fit with my financial goals? How much do you need to make from this property, and by when, to know that it actually does fit with those financial goals? And that really comes back to that first mistake that we talked about, not knowing what your goals are in the first place.
No plan.
having no plan, you can't then effectively assess the fit of the property based on the numbers that it represents. So those two things really go hand in glove together, knowing what is the outcome I'm trying to achieve longer term. And then as a piece of that longer term puzzle, how does this fit? What do the numbers tell me about how it fits? And, people are afraid of the numbers. Brendan, you were a maths teacher, so I know you're not really afraid of numbers, but people say to me all the time, I don't like the numbers. I'm afraid of the numbers. But I also get people who are like, I can't be bothered doing the numbers. As long as it goes up in value, I'm fine. But again, mistake number one is it actually going to fit with your financial goals? It doesn't take a lot to get to grips with the numbers. It's actually not that hard.
It doesn't.
And that's sort of part of getting it right, getting the education around that. And I guess we'll come to that in a minute. But getting it right from the outset really is about starting with those financial goals. That why am I investing in the first place? Financially, what do I need to get out of my investing in what sort of a time frame? Understand what that is, understand why you're doing this, and then everything else will start to fall into place. So if you can quantify it, then you're working towards a specific outcome. Now, what do we mean by quantify it, Brendan?
If I simplify it in a helicopter view, basically you've got a life that you want to live in retirement. When you choose to live that life is a whole other thing. It could be 5 years from now, 50 years from now, but there'll come a time where you're not going to want to work or can't. And then you got, okay, I need a passive income. Based on that passive income, you need a capital amount. Based on that capital amount, you got between now and that time to raise that capital amount. And then every decision you make is centered on your ability to get that capital amount. So is the property I'm about to buy today going to contribute to that capital amount in the time frame that I need it to, with the amount that I need it to, in order to be sure that I live the life that I want when I'm not working? And sometimes you can know that, sometimes you can't know that. But you can give yourself at least the best opportunity for a guess towards the viability of that before pulling the trigger, rather than I hope this is going to work, I'll buy it and suck it and see, and find out that there's a problem later on because of that decision. You're limited in the shorter years that are remaining before you go, which makes the job even harder. And that's what we're attempting to avoid here, making the job hard, making it harder on yourself by doing an error now or doing an error later, or shooting from the hip and hoping and praying. If you can work into a more systemic process towards achievement, then you are so much more likely to live the life that you want versus not.
Exactly. And this is a big question, no doubt. I mean, we do run workshops on this stuff online. So make sure you get along to one of our online workshops on exactly this kind of thing. If you're not really sure how to get started on this, or, hit us up to take advantage of that free strategy session. We can work on that together with you. But it's about, as you say, Brendan, systemically attacking it and saying, I'm starting from here. This is what I have right now. And it might not be a lot, particularly if you're starting out. This is where I need to get to. That might seem like a big gap. But every decision you make on your investments then is working towards closing that gap. The better you understand what that gap is, what that final outcome is that you're trying to achieve, the better you'll be able to make informed decisions about what strategy should I employ. Do I buy and hold the property? Can I go a capital growth path? Do I need cash flow? Do I need to work on doing projects that are actively adding value to properties like renovations or small developments? What do I need to do? How's it going to fit into that model? And you can build up that strategy, that plan, and make better decisions about what you buy, where you buy, and when you buy.
But what if I'm short on time? What if I recognize that I don't have enough cash? What if I find that my borrowing capacity is not going to work for the time frame I'm going to work? I have no snowflake's chance that I'm going to be able to deliver the outcome I want in the time frame I've got.
Yeah, or, I'm looking at the properties around where I live and I can't see how I could possibly afford them, or my bank said you don't have the borrowing capacity. Exactly. These are common problems. No matter how experienced you become as an investor, you're going to be grappling with constantly balancing, how am I going to get hold of capital and how am I going to raise borrowing to be able to do the next deal? Every investor has to face this. The exciting thing about what we've learned about property investing in our own experience is that there are always solutions to this. If you've got limited capital, constrained with borrowing capacity right now, know that property investing is inherently scalable. If you're thinking, I need to be able to afford a $800,000 property or $1 million property. Well, we've had members in our program recently buy properties under 300, even under $200,000 and make 5-6 figure profits from those deals in a matter of months. So it's scalable. If you can't afford a more expensive property, scale down to one you can afford. Just get started, but make sure the numbers make sense. Make sure it fits with your financial goals. Scale to fit your budget. Brennan, with the first home buyer deposit guarantee scheme that's just rolled out, if I'm a first home buyer or I would qualify, how does that help me get started right now?
If you're watching this and you're going, I want to get into property, I've never been in property before, and I haven't had my own home yet, do I invest first and then buy my own home, or do I buy my own home first and then invest? And when you're faced with an opportunity like this first home buyers scheme, you buy your own home. Thanks very much. You walk into your own place, you take advantage of all the things and the incentives and the grants and everything that's offered, and the stamp duty concessions, etc., and everything that's offered that you can to get into the market. But here's the beauty. What you can also do is buy something that's a little bit grungy, a little bit backwater, so that you can then upgrade while living there the quality of the home that you live in, so that when you are finished that about 6, 12, 18 months from now, you can then sell it back into the market for a significantly higher price based on the current growth we're expecting, given the interest rate sentiment and this grant thing. You can have a significant contribution to your equity base from this one purchase, doing an add value and sell, live in. That would be how I'd encourage people to get started right now.
Because think about it, your first home is almost never your forever home. It's a stepping stone to other things. So if you approach your first home with a bit of an investor mindset, selecting a property that's the right kind of property in the right kind of area that's predisposed for growth, that has the ability to add some value along the way while you're living in it, and maybe you only stay in there for 12 months or whatever, but it gives you a springboard to then go on to bigger and better things. And it's a small lifestyle sacrifice, particularly as a first home buyer, to trade your way out of your first home within a year or two, to be able to do more and have a better lifestyle moving forward. So I think there's a great opportunity there. Even if that wasn't there, starting out and doing a live-in project can be a great way to move forwards, because you don't have the same tax consequences on sale and so on. What about limited time? What can I do if I'm feeling really time constrained? Well, I was working in a very high intensity corporate job, doing very long hours, weekends away from home, late nights, and the whole bit. I could still find time to do my investing. So I'm a great believer in the fact that you don't need a huge amount of time to do property investing well and to get started. You just have to make the time. And everyone can find something that they can move aside in their personal calendar, that they've got a little bit of time they could put into this and make a real difference, make a start. But that doesn't mean that you don't try to find efficient ways to use your time. You can outsource. So the whole concept of using buyer's agents to help source properties, but you need to have at least invested some time up front in understanding what it is you want them to find for you, what criteria you want to specify, and understanding how you're going to vet those deals when they're presented to you. But then you can have someone else doing the running around, actually trying to find the opportunities for you. So you can certainly outsource that. And teaming up, and this applies both to limited capital, limited borrowing, and to having limited time. Why does it have to be all you? Why don't you look for other investors that are like-minded, that are on a similar journey, got a similar set of goals, and work with them to do more, to divide and conquer, and reduce the amount of time that you have to spend because someone else is putting time into it as well. So joint ventures, property investing partnerships can be an awesome way to get going or to accelerate what you're doing if you've got limited time or limited capital or limited borrowing. That's something that's been very exciting, I think, in the mentoring program, just to see how many people actually team up and do some pretty incredible things together.
Of course, buying the right property makes a difference. And there are some bullet points here designed to support you in getting the right property. Know what your cash borrowing is, find out what your cash flow requirements are, and what growth potential exists. There are ways to read that and interpret that. Find something that suits your objectives, your time frame on your objectives, your financial goals, a strategy, your skill base. If I'm not skilled at tools, then a reno could be harder to do. So marry your skills up with the strategy that you take on. The location you go to. If you're in Sydney looking to do a renovation project as your first project, don't go and buy Perth because that's a long travel. How much effort and time do you want to put to this? What skills? Again, reading the suburb dynamics will make a difference. Looking for something that's scarce and in demand. Scarce is not weird. Scarce is something that's sought after, not weird. Crunch the numbers and again, get to know the numbers. And if you're not sure how to read the numbers or do the numbers, then lean on people around you that can do that. Simon.
Yeah, I'm just going to put a plug in there for our real estate success community as well. There are resources on exactly these topics, how to do a lot of this stuff, how to understand numbers, how to understand reading the markets and so on, that are already freely available in our real estate success community, which you can join for free. So just head over to realestatesuccess.community. If you're not already a member of that, join up, doesn't cost you anything, and start to get stuck into some of those educational resources, which will really help skill you up in that space as well.
And that leads to this point, and it's the essence, really, of today's conversation. Start to invest in yourself. Learn what you need to learn to know good from bad, right from wrong. The more you understand about the field that you're playing in, the less vulnerable you are to being somebody's prey. You can make more informed and more profound and successful decisions for your own investing success. And that's the primary objective here. The more educated you are about what's going on in your world around you and in the field that you've got an interest in, the more informed the decisions will be. Learn to analyze areas, property deals, numbers. Build the financial knowledge and get a little bit of discipline around spending and living the life comfortably within your means. Develop a psychology that's centered on not ready, fire, aim, but ready, aim, and fire.
Yeah.
Find yourself a mentor, be informed, get some support. Classic quote, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. That's a really hefty price.
It is indeed. And if we can help people get a bit of a leg up here at no cost, then we'd love to be able to do that. And so the invitation is there to have a free strategy session with one of our mentoring team, the opportunity to take a look at where you're at. If you've never invested before and you're thinking of getting into your first property investment, then let's unpack that. Let's look at where you're at, what you're trying to achieve, what might make sense as an investment. We don't have properties to sell. This is just an opportunity for you to be able to tap into some wisdom and knowledge from an experienced property investor who can maybe help you get the first steps right. And if you're an experienced investor, looking at, well, what are some of the obstacles in your way? What are you trying to achieve through investing? What's slowing you down? What are some creative ideas about how you might be able to break through those barriers? If you've got one or more investment properties already, or if you are looking to buy a property in a specific area, we can bring some of the analysis power of our property predictions database to bear and give you some real insights on where those suburbs are heading over the coming months so that you can make more informed decisions again about, does it make sense to keep holding this property? Might it be time for a change? Does it make sense to buy into this area? And really focus in on what are the next steps to help get you down that path towards your financial goals. How can you do things smarter? How can you do things faster? How can you manage the risk along the way? And if you're trying to achieve financial freedom, what are the steps along that path? What does your plan towards financial freedom actually look like?
Guys, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. Until we meet again, invest wisely. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.